How's it going? Back with another tutorial for the Accessvirus TI. We're moving away from the trance theme that we've had going for the past couple of weeks. I'm going to show you something a bit different today. You're really going to get a chance to see what the virus is capable of. I've done this patch with a little dubstep beat, so I'll show you it and then we'll get down to how I made it. Okay, there it is. I'll just remind you again quickly, if you are not subscribed to our YouTube channel, make sure you head over there and check it out. It's youtube.com/ADSRtuts. Right, this patch, as I said, is a lot different to anything we've done so far. I had a job trying to work out which genre it best fits. I tried it with dubstep, which is what I've done here. I tried it with electro, and I tried it with drum and bass. I sped it up so it fitted the drum and bass. It works with all of them really, so it's quite a versatile patch. Right, so we might as well get to it. We'll init the patch. Oscillator section. The first oscillator we set to Hypersaw, which we used in the last tutorial. Push it all the way around to the right, so we've got 8 saws alongside each other. We'll detune these to about 55. Push the semitone up 12, so up 1 octave. Oscillator 2, change to wavetable, and I choose a wavetable called WhizzFizz. Now this wavetable is like it sounds. It's quite a high-pitched, gritty sort of wavetable, which works really well with the modulation that we do later on. I pull this one down 12 semitones, 1 octave. Pull the detune down from its original position to about 9 o'clock. Sync the 2 oscillators together. We want a nice even tone for this patch. And don't touch anything else except the FM mode. Change this to phase mod. Keep the FM mode on 0, but we are going to modulate this so it opens up later on with the LFO. Okay, just these 2 oscillators then. So not much going on yet. Oscillator 3, I chose wave 45. I chose this for the same reason I did WhizzFizz. It's quite a gritty metallic sort of sound and it goes well with the modulation that we do later on. Pull this one down 1 octave, same as oscillator 2, 12 semitones. Keep the detune where it is pretty much, push it up slightly to about -54. We use a sub oscillator which creates another oscillator 1 octave below oscillator 1. Push the volume up to the middle. Keep the oscillator 3 volume in the middle and oscillator 1-2 balance dead center. We do use a little bit of noise in the sound. Push the volume up between the O and the I. Change the colour all the way around to the right so it's as bright as it can go. Unison mode set to 4. We want quite a lot of space. Although the envelopes that we use are quite plucky, it does make a difference to the sound. Push the detune to 12 o'clock. Pan spread 50%. LFO phase offset just past 50, about +12. So yeah, I'll show you it with the other 2 oscillators in the unison. A lot richer with that sub oscillator and the unison involved. So yeah, we're going to go to the Arpeggiator now. I don't use the Arpeggiator as you would expect an Arpeggiator to be used to like change the notes over a time period. I use this just to give us the groove behind the LFO that we've got going on. So I'll change this mode to up and down. It doesn't really matter what it's on in all honesty because we're not, as I said, we're not using it to change the pitch of any notes. I pulled this down just to 4, so we're only using these four sections that cycle over and over. Turn all 4 on by clicking the 4 at the top. Pull number 1 down to just above the 2 boxes. Pull number 2 just below the top of the 3rd. Pull number 3 just above the 5th, sorry. And pull number 4 to just above the second one just below the second one that we did, sorry. About there, top of the 3rd box. The octave range doesn't matter because, as I say, we're not changing the pitch of any notes. Keep the note length where it is, the swing where it is, and keep the resolution on 1/16. That means it's going to be quite quick. It's a 16th note repetition, but it's just going to keep repeating these 4 steps over and over. Okay, I'll show you what it sounds with this arpeggiator in. Okay, as I say, we're just using this arpeggiator to give us a groove. It's not changing any of the notes. So yeah, that is it for the arpeggiator. We'll go to the filter section now. Filter 1 we keep as a low pass. We are going to modulate this with an envelope, so push the envelope amount up to about in between 9 and 10 o'clock. To keep the cutoff link and filter link together, and push the resonant of both filters up to about 6. Filter 2, we use a band pass. Anything outside of this triangle you're not going to hear. It only shows you what's inside this band pass, so it's like selecting a part of the frequency that you want to hear, really. We'll cool the cutoff down to -53. We're going to modulate this with a sample and hold LFO later on. That's what gives us the real sporadic sort of effect that we've got going on. Envelope amount for this, keep it the same, keep it on positive, keep the filter balance between the two. Filter saturation that we used, I used a middle one. It's quite a soft saturation really, but it just adds a nice bit of effect before we go to the effects section itself. Okay, we'll set up the filter envelope. It's pretty much as it was actually. I didn't really do hardly anything with it. All I did was just push the decay up ever so slightly to probably 49 for the decay. Amp envelope, I push the attack out to about 9 o'clock just to stop any clicking at the start of the notes. Pull the decay all the way back to about 10 o'clock. Sustain 11 all the way back. Slope where it is. Just keep the release where it is as well. This is what makes the real plucky staccato sort of notes that we've got running through with the LFO. Okay, I'll show you it with the filters in play now. Okay, right, filter section is done. We'll do the FX1 and 2 now, and then we'll go to the LFO that's going to modulate a few parameters later on. So FX1, I use the analog boost as always. I kept it where it was and the tune where it was. I didn't touch it. You do use some chorus on this just to thicken it out a little bit. I used the classic chorus. Push the chorus mix to about 9 o'clock. Keep everything else where it is. Make sure this delay is on 0. We're going to modulate this later on with the LFO. So it needs to be on 0 for it to work properly. Okay, distortion I used, quite a soft distortion again. I use a soft bounce. Treble boost and high cut kept where it was, so it's like as standard. Pulled the mix back to about 2 o'clock. Pushed the drive up to about 10 o'clock. Filter bank, I used a comb filter. This warms the sound up as well as the chorus. It sort of adds an extra bit of space and depth to the sound. Push the frequency up to about 10 o'clock, the resonance between 10 and 9. Push the stereo phase around to about 2 o'clock. Used a tiny bit of EQ, not much, just boosted the lows plus 1 dB and the highs plus 1 dB as well, just to give those two a little bit more presence. Okay, I'll show you it with FX1. We gritted the sound up a little bit already with those two effects. So FX2 we'll go to now. I use a bit of delay and reverb. Turn them both on. I set both of them to the same volume, minus 8.0 dB. You use a simple delay. I set it to 1/3, so it was an offbeat delay so you can hear it. And I push the feedback up to about 4.75%, something like that. We do use the LFO running through the delay. I changed it to sample and hold. It's the same sample and hold as what we're going to use with the LFO as well. It's just sort of a random amount. Push the colour up to 2 o'clock, rate up to about 8, 9 o'clock, and the LFO depth to about 10 o'clock. The reverb we used was just an ambience. Because it's such a plucky sound, you can hardly hear the reverb, but it does add just a little bit of space to the sound. pull the decay down to about 11 o'clock, keep the damping where it is, no pre-delay. Okay, I'll show you it with a delay and a reverb. Those two effects just feel the sound out a bit, just make it feel a bit richer. Okay, so now we will get down to the LFO. As I say, I used LFO 1 for this, and in this little box here, I'll set this to filter cutoff 2. Now last week I showed you that there are dedicated filter knobs for LFO 2, so you might be wondering why we use this. The reason is, in the matrix section, you can show how much you want this knob to affect what the LFO is doing to it. I wanted a different amount to what the standard preset of filter 2 is, so this really helps you set it to how you want it rather than just going by the preset. So yeah, I'll pull this down to about 45%, set to filter 2 cutoff. Set it to sample and hold. What sample and hold does is it, over this section that you've told it that you want it to take chunks from, it takes random pieces at random values, but it assigns them to the clock that you set. You set this to 1/8, so 1/8 notes, so it's quite quick. It's going to be changing between different cutoff frequencies quite quickly, but it's not as quick as the ARP. I wanted it to be slightly different from the ARP. Yeah, that's it. I didn't do anything with the trigger phase or key follow, just turn sample and hold on, turn it to 1/8 note. So yeah, you'll be able to hear this now, moving the cutoff of filter 2 about. Okay, we're getting there. So that is it for LFOs. That's all I did, just that sample and hold. We are going to use this to modulate other things, but we need to go into the matrix for that. So we'll do that now. Go into the matrix section. Change source 1 to LFO1 bipolar. Now, difference between bipolar and unipolar. Bipolar means that the LFO will go positive and negative values, which is what you want for this. So change it to bipolar. Slot 1 that I did, I changed this to chorus delay. Now, you need to be really careful with this. You need to set this to +1. Any more or any less, and it sounds really, really different. Just be very, very careful. That's why I told you when we set the chorus up earlier, make sure that the delay is on 0. And this LFO is going to just literally modulate that up 1 click to +1. I'll show you what it does, and then I'll change it around so you can see what difference it makes. So yeah, very important you get that to just +1. Any more, it starts to phase and sound a little bit weird in my eyes. We also use this LFO1 bipolar for oscillator 2 FM amount. That is this FM amount here, which is also set to 0 at the minute. But this amount that we're going to set this to shows you how much it wants it to, which parts it wants to choose sections from for the LFO. So push this up to just above the end of the crossfader for the first slot that we did. Okay, the other modulation what we do is the filter envelope, which we set up earlier with that short snappy attack and snappy decay. I use this to modulate filter to resonance. This is what gives it that sort of acidy, squelchy sound. Filter to resonance. You need to push this up to about the same as we did for this box here, just below the S. Okay, the only other modulation as I did is I set the mod wheel up to control filter 1 cutoff. I'll play around with this later and you'll see what this does. It enables you to open the sound up while it's running through its cycle with the ARP. So yeah, that's pretty much the sound done. The only other thing I did was I went into the common section. If you go into the common section, these 3 destination boxes are for the soft knobs. Every Axis Virus that you buy has 3 soft knobs. You can assign these to whatever you want. They're the 3 under the display. So yeah, I assigned number 1 as LFO1 assign amount. LFO1 assign amount. That is this. So this controls how big a chunk that you want the LFO to take its samples from. It's fun to play around with this in the mod wheel. You get some real nice effects. So yeah, go to that, common, LFO1, destination, LFO1 sign amount for the softknob one. And that is it, that is the sound done. So what I'll do is I'll play this through now this patch is finished, and I'll mess around with the cut-off for filter 1, which is assigned to the mod wheel, and the softknob 1, which I assign to this, and you'll be able to see what you can do when you play around with it. Well, there you go. You can have loads of fun playing around with that. As I say, well chuffed with this patch. It's got everything that you need, I say, either for a dubstep riff or an electro riff. Or as I say, I'll sped it up and did it with a drum and bass patch. So yeah, I hope you learned something. Again, this is a bit more involved than the other two, but yeah, really pleased with it. As I say, thanks again for ADSR for giving me a chance to show you what the virus is capable of. Okay, any questions? Don't be afraid to ask. Cheers.